Good morning. I am Tom LED and I am here in EMC's new conference room. It's been an exciting week in the League of Emitting dudes. This time last week CEO, President, and all-around super guy, Jerry Johnson, was hosting the draft. Make no mistake though, his generosity will not save him from the wrath of Tom LED. In week 1 we had several close matchups as well as some blowouts. The big winner this week was Team Lumen Boy. His draft strategy was simple. Pick good players and draft a kicker early to make sure to get the glass of Johnny Walker Blue. We knew Lumen Boy was a fantasy expert, but weaving in the JW Blue was a stroke of pure genius. Lumen Boy is on a higher ethereal plane than the rest of us. On the opposite side of the spectrum we have Induction Production. He is truly living up to his namesake and is in dead last place. Derek, what are your thoughts on your feeble week 1 performance?
I like running backs.
Great stuff, Derek. I was surprised to see that you didn't put in a $100 bid for Alfred Morris. I can only assume that you didn't know waivers were processed this morning.
Actually, Tom, I tried to bid $120, but my computer CD-ROM drive wouldn't take my $20 bill, so I gave up. Don't worry, Tom, I'll find some running backs to spend my $100 on.
Actually, your computer is only set up to take coins. You will need to feed quarters into the SD card port.
Thanks for the tip, Tom. Don't tell anyone else.
You bet, champ. Moving on, there seem to be some team owners that have a pretty inflated view of themselves and refuse to have a team name that doesn't honor themselves. Maybe I should help them name their teams. Team Rideberg. How about Team Riding the Bench? Do you have a starting running back anywhere on your roster? You might want to pick up the phone and give Derek a call.
Whoa there, Tom. I have big plans for these 5 running backs. They are not for sale.
Excellent strategy, Derek. Team Fajested. More like Team Fajucking Terrible. You should have just cut your losses in round 5, picked a kicker, and justified your participation in the league as a $25 glass of JW Blue. Team Stoltz. How about Team Breezing off the draft? Your father-in-law had knee surgery. This reporter is skeptical. I am pretty sure your wife drafted this team, and if last year was any indication, that was a good thing. Just make sure she helps you out each week with roster moves.
I just had a baby, and I made it to the draft.
Team So Cool. You better hope Law Firm is an experienced ambulance chaser because your team is riddled with injury risks. I'll call your team Meshbesher and Gimps. Our final egocentric team owner is Team Lowhide. You would expect the director of marketing to get a little bit more creative with his team name. 2008 called. It wants its championship team back. Your team is about as efficient as an LED from 2008. I'll call you Team Cold Storage because that's all LEDs were good for in 2008. Losing last week to Team Cold Storage was Mr. Eckhart. I think it was our closest match in EMC fantasy football history. Mr. Eckhart lost because Oakland went for too late Monday night instead of kicking an extra point. A couple more losses like that and you might have to give yourself the Sacco Trophy. Matt Kuntz's team won despite its owner's lack of basic English skills. It's no wonder he drafted players like Rice, and Brown, and Smith. Owners of players with easy names to spell, like Green, White, Luck, and Bush can expect trade offers from Matt shortly. I think you might have been 100% too high when you named your team. Matt, I think you should change your team name to Martine Grammatical Errors. Losing in week 1 to Martine Grammatical Errors was Greg Little. When you name your team after a player you are not even starting, you know you might be in trouble. Team Greg Little was a little bit off on players worth starting in week 1. The real Greg Little has Brandon Whedon throwing to him. Now there is a player that belongs on Kuntz's too high team. I think that Tony Johnson should change his team name to Kurtzwurst on the Stafford. Speaking of Tony Johnson, what a bunch of pathetic running backs you have on your team.
Embarrassing.
Nice plan spending $21 on a starting running back who plays for Mike Shanahan. By week 3 you'll need to feed quarters into your SD port on your computer just so you can pick up some schmuck who gets 5 carries a game.
Hey Tom, you said you'd keep quiet about that.
Tony, You barely managed to outscore a team that spent its first 4 picks on running backs. How can you sleep at night? But fear not cellular interference. There was one other team besides induction production worse than you last week, and that was Hot Tree Strikes. It looks like O'Brien's team might take 10 weeks to relight after that power failure of a draft. I don't see any quartz backup lamps in your team's future. Your team is in pitch black, running into each other, and can't find its way onto the waiver wire fast enough. You better hope those bug eyes turn on soon. Only one more team left to savage. And that is the nepotistically named Stephen Ridley to Victory. Cute name, pun master. Some better options would have been Team Lance Moore, crappier than last year, or Team Andy Dalton of worthless players, or Team 49ers points per week. The schedule makers have done you a big favor, Robert, by giving you cellular interference and induction production the first 2 weeks. That's like the University of Minnesota playing UNLV and New Hampshire their first 2 weeks. Soon reality will set in when you start playing your Big Ten schedule. Well, that just about does it for week 1. Wait. I feel like I am forgetting something. Oh yes. My favorite team. The Hampton Inn Hot Tubers. Much like their team owner at 4:30 p.m. on a typical audit trip, they were able to relax in the hot tube and save their energy for a long 6-hour day the following week. Rest your weary muscles, Hot Tubers, for with players like Brady, Steven Jackson, and Roddy White, your team's future shines brighter than a hot tub timer indicator light. Anything less than a championship would feel like staying at a red roof inn. Until next week, light emitting dudes, I am Tom LED, signing off. Hot Tuber. Hot Tuber. Hot Tuber. Hot Tuber.